Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Come As You Are Getting Started with EDI Committees in Your Library webinar. My name is Beth Yates and I'm the Children's Consultant from the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office, and I'll be the host and question moderator for you today. We have several presenters today, very exciting. From Hussey Mayfield Public Library, we have Shelby Couch and Robin Bowers, if you guys want to give a little wave. From the Kokomo Howard County Public Library, we have Angela Garrett, Amy Russell, and Ashley Myers. And from the Johnson County Public Library, we have Keely Waters and Whitney Woody. And I'm going to hand the reins over to them in just a minute. I have a couple more things to talk about first. To register for other webinars or trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library, and it's under services for libraries. This session is 1 hour. You're eligible to receive 1 LEU for this presentation. If you're watching a recording of this webinar, instructions on how to obtain your LEU are in the video's description on YouTube, or you can find those instructions on the ISL's continuing education site under LEU policies. But in short, when you watch a recording, your director or someone in your HR department at your library should create a certificate for you, as they are the ones who can verify that you watched it. Okay, I think we are finally ready to get started. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Keely Waters from Johnson County Public Library to get us started.
Welcome, everyone. Before we officially get started, I wanted to lay out some guidelines so that everyone feels heard, respected, and able to ask any questions they may have. We use these guidelines at the Johnson County Public Library for some more sensitive programming, and we felt that they might be helpful for us today. Number 1, be respectful of others' views and opinions. We are here to learn from one another. Number 2, the goal is not to agree. It is to gain a deeper understanding of the topics being presented. Number 3, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I will tell you that is a huge part of this work. Number 4, please do not dismiss or downplay someone else's experience. Instead, share your own story and experiences. Number 5, participate to the fullest of your ability. Community growth depends on the inclusion of every individual voice. Number 6, if you're being disruptive to the conversation or dominating it, we may ask you to mute yourself so that others have the opportunity to share. And 7, we want this to be a great experience for everyone attending. Thank you for respecting and following the ground rules. And with that said, let's get going.
All right, well, we did want to begin with just a brief description of Project Ready. And that's because all 3 of the libraries here today did kind of use Project Ready as a starting point for our DEI committees. And so right here up at the top, like it says, Project Ready is an acronym for Reimagining Equity and Access for Diverse Youth. However, it's not just the only beneficial for people working with youth. It would be beneficial really for anybody working really in probably libraries, schools, all sorts of places. But Project Ready is 27 modules, and they consist of a variety of different learning tools. So there's articles, there's online quizzes, videos, slideshows, examples of what other libraries are doing, and suggestion for books, and just a variety of things to help you learn about different aspects of this topic.
We really wanted to mention Project Ready because it's so unique. It is a free online training resource, and it's provided by a group of professionals from all aspects of the library field, and even some people who are in tangential fields. And while it has all of these great resources and everything, it is funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. So it's free, It's a learning, professional training, and you can get LEUs for it or some kind of professional certification through your state library. So the Indiana State Library did give us 30 LEUs for doing it. We spent far more time on it than that, but it's up to you what you choose to do as far as time. I put the link here in the description, and we'll send that out later. But what I really want to make sure everyone knows is that what makes Project Ready so worthwhile and so powerful isn't just all of the amazing resources and information that it gives, but it helps you learn so much. So one thing that I think we all learned quite a bit was we learned how to lean into the uncomfortable. And Keely mentioned that in the ground rules, but it's so valuable to learn about how to be uncomfortable in situations. We're talking about very touchy and hot topics right now, and it's okay to be uncomfortable, and that's how you learn and grow. In the group conversations we had from Project Ready, that's where the growth really happened, was that uncomfortableness and that learning and that growth and how we were able to learn from each other. So Project Ready holds so much more than just the resources. To make sure that you all know, and so we'll go into Project Ready later, we just wanted to make sure that we mentioned it because every library is going to reference it several times. So it's just so you know, I'm Shelby Couch. I'm one of the teen and adult services librarians here at Hussey Mayfield. And the way I'm involved in this is that I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee Chair currently. All my information is listed there below, and you'll get it in the slideshow if you want to reach out to us individually for anything.
And I'm Robin Bowers, and I'm one of the youth services librarians here at the Hussey Mayfield Memorial Public Library. And I'm Shelby's co-chair with our DEI committee. And we just wanted to give you a little background about how we got started with ours. So just for reference, I think our library is the smallest of the libraries represented here. We have about 50 staff, a little bit less. Right now, we're just one building, but we are getting ready to build a branch, and we did just acquire a bookmobile, but we are still a pretty small library in comparison to some. So for us, COVID actually gave us the opportunity to really devote a lot of time to Project Ready in a way that we probably wouldn't have been able to do during normal times. So Shelby sent an email to both the youth services librarians and the teen and adult services librarians, and kind of told us a little bit about what Project Ready is, and asked if anybody would want to join her in doing the modules. And so there were about 5 of us who decided to do that. And again, since it was COVID, we weren't doing like regular programming. We were working from home a lot more. We were, several days a week we were at home. And so this allowed us to kind of go through each of the modules. And the way we did it, each week we would do a module on our own, and then we would meet on Zoom and discuss it and kind of talk about what we had learned and how we felt about these modules. And for this, it was really, really valuable for us because we literally every single week for 7 or 8 months were getting together and talking about it. And so I think we've all been to workshops or conferences where you leave and you're super passionate and you're excited to start working on whatever it is that you learned. But then, you get back into the, day-to-day work, and sometimes that gets pushed to the back. But with Project Ready, because we were doing it, every week, discussing it, it really was, foremost in our minds and became really powerful for us. And as we were discussing things as a group, both through the modules that we were learning about and through our own discussions, we kind of saw that there were definitely ways that we could use what we were learning and make a difference in pretty much all the areas of our own library.
As we kept going through Project Ready, we started to get to the last probably 3 or 4 modules, and we didn't really want it to end. We knew that we wanted to keep going with this work, and we weren't sure what that kind of looked like. So we quit meeting weekly and we went to monthly just to stretch it out a little longer so that we could kind of figure out what our next steps were. We kind of threw around some ideas and said, what can we do? How can we get staff involved in this without taking up, we can't ask every single staff member to spend, 7 or 8 months or 60+ hours or whatever it was. So instead, we talked to our managers, we talked to our administration, and we were suggested to make a committee. So our strategic plan already had a lot of the information that we needed to start this committee. And we were asked by our director, who was really excited about this, to present to our board. And she asked that we come with a little bit of research and we say, why can we support this? What do we do? So we looked up some of our demographics of our service areas, things like that. But we also looked up our strategic plan, and I have a copy of it. And when I flipped through it originally, I actually still have my notes from when I made the presentation. And just this one, there, every single page has something to do with what our committee was about. So it already says in one of the beginning pages that the Hussey Mayfield Memorial Public Library aspires to be welcoming, diverse, inclusive, where people of all backgrounds, regardless of race, religion, socioeconomic status, or age, are supported. And that was a continuing theme, even people they heard throughout the community and community conversations, things like that. So once we did that, presented to the board, we became official. Yay. And ever since then, that was in May of 2020.
2021.
It was 2021. Yeah, 2021, May of 2021. So we've been going about a year now, and we currently have 7 members. So the original intended goal was that we would have a member from each of our departments. Now, we're a bit smaller of a library, and like everybody else, we're experiencing understaffing, things like that. And some of our departments are just a lot smaller, and there's a lot of work to be done, and they can't all be there all the time. So we have been trying to communicate with some of those departments, but we do have 7 members. We meet monthly, and we try to come up with an agenda ahead of time, and we really try to talk about what we can and get everybody excited about what we've got going on.
So Shelby was definitely amazing and spearheaded our whole everything about our experience, and got our committee approved. But we did learn that our committee was different than, you know, our other committees there in our own library. And so kind of like it says here on the slide, we had to focus on building a foundation for ourselves and identifying what the ultimate purpose of our committee, what it is. And to be honest, I think we're still kind of, you know, growing with that, deciding that, figuring it out, working it out. But we knew early on, one thing that we wanted to do was try to find something similar to Project Ready, like another kind of training like that for staff, at least for the DEI staff, committee staff, but that would look at it instead of from a racial justice lens, but through an LGBTQ lens. And so Shelby found something called Safe Zone training, and it's much shorter than Project Ready. I think we spent about 4 weeks doing that, meeting once a week with that. And it just kind of helped us, you know, to thoughtfully consider, you know, stereotypes or misconceptions, or helped us to learn key vocabulary, and also think about different scenarios. And Shelby was the facilitator for that, but she also reached out to Q+ Indiana Council, and some members of that organization came, and they also helped facilitate a couple of the trainings and answered questions for us. And so in regards to trying to identify our purpose as a committee, we've pretty much determined that we are more of an advisory committee, and we advise on issues in the library, and looking at it through a DEI lens. So, like, for example, we were asked to meet and discuss Harry Potter programming in our library, and you know, kind of thinking about it based on some of the statements that J.K. Rowling has made, and just kind of offer some advice on Harry Potter programming. And so we met, and then we kind of offered again some advice to the programming librarians. And it wasn't necessarily like, yes, we're going to do Harry Potter programming, or no, we cannot do Harry Potter programming. It was just advice on, you know, how to go about that. And it would be up to the librarians, the programming librarians, to, you know, how they want to incorporate that. And then another example is this week on our agenda, we're going to be talking about the holiday collection in the youth services department. And they want us to just look at, you know, what holidays could be included. Right now, it's very heavy on like Christmas and Easter and Mother's Day, but we want to expand that and be more inclusive. And as a committee, we're going to kind of look at that and then ultimately advise the collection and development librarians and youth services staff, but they will make the final call. We just, again, advise it based on that one, on looking at it through the DEI lens.
So right now we're working on a lot of goals and projects. We've been working on things for the several months, but a lot of it's been figuring out where we fit and how we do things. So we've done a few small things, and I'll just highlight a few of those. My favorite that we've done after Safe Zone training, we were able to talk to our director and make it clear to staff. It wasn't necessarily something they couldn't do before. It just wasn't really something talked about, so that now our staff have the opportunity to put their personal pronouns in their email signatures and wear their personal pronouns on their person at any time, as long as it fits in with the dress code, which nobody's done anything too outlandish yet. But what was great about that for me was not long after we did that, we hired a bunch of new staff, and someone on our staff came to us and came to me and said, I heard that you were a part of this and that you kind of helped bring this around. And I just wanted you to know that I wasn't sure when I came here what I was walking myself into. And now that I've heard that we can do that, even though I'm not comfortable doing it just yet and sharing my personal pronouns, they wanted me to know that they felt comfortable and safe in doing so, and that this made them feel safer in their employment here. And that made us feel really good. They allowed me to share that without, saying their name to other people. And that made us feel really good that we had done something that made an impact on our staff. We've also presented with Johnson County Public Library and Kokomo Howard County Public Library, some of these same ladies, at a panel at the Youth Services Division Conference last year in 2021 for ILF on Project Ready and EDI committees and things like that. The same three libraries, we're all a cohort at this point. We were also able to meet with someone from the Midwest Collaborative to talk about what are some ways they can help support libraries with this endeavor, and that was very helpful. We've made a list of diverse places for jobs for our HR to post so we can get a bigger, wider, diverse pool of candidates for jobs. And we've also changed our library card sign up process to remove some of the things that weren't necessary on there, such as gender, and it listed any disabilities or things you might need, just things that weren't necessary. So we think that'll really help make our library card sign up process a little smoother and more inclusive. Right now, we're really trying to figure ourselves out, and we've done a lot of talking, and we're really ready to move on with projects and things. We're excited. So we do have a goals form that we're working on, and I had every single person in the committee write down in a Google Doc, if you had to leave this committee in a year, what would you want to see happen? And everybody was so great and put all sorts of things. Obviously, there's so much under this umbrella that we could be doing. So we made a goals form, and I helped base it off some of the forms that I got from Johnson County and from Kokomo Howard County. And we're getting in the finalized steps of that. And then we also are creating a resource toolkit. So we're taking some of the things we've learned from like Safe Zone training and Project Ready and putting them into bite-sized chunks or things that are important for our staff so they can go in and train. So if you see the picture to the right, this is one of the first images in a social story that one of our committee members has made. And she is also creating a resource to explain to staff why a social story is important, who it helps, that kind of thing. Then we're also getting ready to delve into programs and events, which we can always talk about later if anybody's interested in what we're doing individually. But I'm just really proud of what we are doing here at HMMPL, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. All right, Kokomo, it's all up to you guys.
All right, thanks, Shelby. Hi, I'm Angela, one of the children's librarians here at Kokomo Howard County Public Library, and I have some of my coworkers and my friends. We have Ashley Myers, who's our resource discovery librarian, and also we have Miss Amy Russell, who is the head of our genealogy and local history department. And so they're going to be sharing a little bit later on some of the things that we are doing from our equity plan. All right, Ms. Shelby, can we go to the next slide, please? Uh-oh, go back one more, please. Okay, thank you. All right, so how we got started, thanks, with EDI. It has always been a part of our library's strategic plan to have diversity be a big part of the library. One of the things that we were, our focus is going to be to position our library in the community to have an added value to our patrons that we serve in the community. that we are involved in our diverse materials, have meaningful services, equality programs and events. So it's always been a part of what we're doing here. But what happened in 2020 with all of the racial injustices, it kind of pushed us forward to putting some of those places into action. And at the same time, how things work, a part of our children's services came across Project Ready. And so we did that. And our supervisor at the time said it was really great for the whole library. So he introduced it to the leadership team, and they have also went through it so that it's spreading throughout our library, which we're really excited about. So in the meantime, our director put a call out to anybody that wanted to be a part of EDI work. And we had about 11 members who volunteered to be on the committee. And so she had a plan kind of laid out of what she wanted to see developed and presented to the board. And so the 11 of us on the committee worked on the plan, and we have it now. It's going to be a link in the resources so you can read the whole plan, but we have pulled out the 4 areas that we want to be focused on. And you can see on the screen, the 4 focus areas was our program and services, our collection, our workforce development, and staff training, and also our community relations. So we're going to, and what was really kind of cool was like everybody on staff got one of these business cards that highlighted the equity plan. So it can kind of be in front of them when they're doing their job, so they can see what the goals are for the library and make sure that, you know, we kind of following in line with that. So I'm going to have Ashley talk a little bit about, oh, okay. Now, first I'm going to start, I'm sorry. So one of the things that we're working on currently is putting together a program checklist. So the EDI initiative will always be in front of those who are planning programs. We took from Project Ready, like you don't have to start really big. It can be something just as small as your book displays. And we took a program that is really familiar with all libraries, the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. And it's a national program, and they put together a recommended book list. And so what we did was look at the list, and we kind of compared and see how many diverse authors and books titles that were in there, and it was not very diverse. So I emailed all of the children's staff to email me their favorite diverse title of books. And so we updated that. And so now we pass it out, and we'll have that also on the resource page, so you'll get a chance to look at it. And our graphic artist, who was amazing, did a great job with putting book covers on it so people can see how diverse the list really is. And so it was something very small that we did that is going to have a big impact. And on our checklist, we want to make sure our things that you be looking for, like your program speakers, is there any diversity in there? One of the things that we are looking into is putting diverse authors on our end caps, so people can see the materials, our marketing materials, just really small things to help push us forward so everyone can see themselves in the things that we do. And as far as our collection, we use some popular websites like We Need Diverse Books to we did an informal kind of audit to look and see if we are seeing some of those titles in our collection. And I am so very glad to say that we are doing very well. I'm so pleased. So we use a recommended list, the ALA Youth Media Awards, and of course our patron requests, and to kind of make sure that our collection is diverse and representative of the community that we serve. I'm sure later on we'll do a formal audit, but just doing some informal ones just to kind of get an eye on the things that we are ordering gets out, and it's reflective, and then includes that. And so Ashley can talk a little bit about that as well, because she works in that department.
Yeah, so I'll just follow up a little bit with what Angie said. I get to work side by side with some of our collection development librarians, and I really am just proud of how they prioritize finding diverse titles. And not only that, we make it a priority to really rush those items from the point of ordering, cataloging, processing to get them out the door. Especially we try to pay attention to Black History Month, just trying to make sure that we're spending our money on materials and getting them out of the door in a timely fashion so that patrons can use them when we're talking about things like that. So Angie did a great job talking about how our EDI committee got started. Good job. And then I'm going to move in to a little bit more about how we focus on staff training, which is another portion of our equity plan. So
And Ms. Shelby, the next slide.
next
please.
slide, please.
Yes,
Thank you so much. So one of the things we wanted to do at KHCPO is offer educational training, both formal and informal, to our staff. So how are we going to do that? Angie mentioned that Project Ready had actually already kicked off at our library before our EDI committee was formed. We did a little switcheroo compared to Robin and Shelby, and I was really proud that their staff stepped up. She's part of our children's services staff. And so, like she said, they completed that first, and then it transitioned to our leadership team. And then we adopted, on the EDI committee, we adopted Project Ready into one of our initiatives. So that's our version of formal training. So Children's has completed it. Our leadership team, which is all of our upper level managers, have completed Project Ready as of last week. Amy was in that group. And then we have a third cohort currently that I'm a part of, which is a lot of our middle level managers. And we will hopefully finish Project Ready in 2022. I want to pause real quick and just point out part of our workforce development initiative, like Shelby and Robin's, is to hire more diverse applicants for the positions available at our library. So not only do we want to advertise our jobs in places that we weren't before, we also want to retain those employees, hopefully, when they find out that all of our hiring managers and our upper level staff at the minimum have been trained in topics related to EDI. So we want those applicants to feel comfortable at our library, and that is something that's been really important to us. As Shelby and Robin already mentioned, Project Ready is very time intensive. Don't be intimidated by that, though. We think it's really important. It can look different ways for every library. Like they mentioned, they switched gears and went to once a month. So I want to throw that out there because I know as a regular employee, the time that it takes can feel like a lot, but the work is definitely worth it. So one of the things, though, you can go ahead to the next slide, is we wanted to offer another opportunity for our staff to participate, especially those that might not have the time available because they work public desks or they're super part-time. You know, Project Ready might not be something that they can do right now. So we wanted to offer an alternative. And one of the things that we came up with are these EDI conversations. So Angie came up with the name for that. And what those look like, they are monthly sessions hosted. Each month is different by a different member of our EDI committee. And so they get to choose the topic, they host, they facilitate the conversation. February was our first one. We just kicked this off, but we do have the rest of the year almost planned out. So February, we discussed homelessness with a webinar by Ryan Dowd. You guys might be familiar with him. March, we're going to be discussing 13th, which is a documentary. And then April, we're talking about autism. And then May, gearing up for Pride Month, we're going to be talking about LGBTQ initiatives. So between Project Ready, which hopefully by the end of 2022, we'll have about 1/3 of our staff completed in these EDI conversations. Between those two initiatives, we're hoping to catch everybody on our staff so that they are introduced, at least, if not, more experienced with topics related to EDI. So next, I'm going to hand it over to Amy, and she's going to talk a little bit about our community outreach.
Next slide would be good. So we've been working on community outreach for a couple of years, and I'm a representative for the library on the Douglas School Restoration Committee. Douglas School was formed in 1920 as the colored school for Kokomo, and they held that position until 1949 when the anti-segregation laws went into effect. The school closed in 1968 and the building sat vacant for quite a while. And now there's a restoration project being planned to turn it into a community center for the African American community. And because we're finding that there's been so much history coming out of this project, we decided it would be a good time to get a grant from the state library with the LSTA. And we've been putting our history, our African American notables, into our Howard County Memory Project. And it's also going into the Indiana Memory Project. One more slide, please. So this is a screenshot of our Howard County Memory Project. And we are focusing right now on an African American notables. We have a lot of other Howard County information in, but we're really focusing right now with this because we are gathering a great deal of information, and we're actually stirring up stories from even to the beginning of the county. So this has been a great project for us. We've also, in addition to working with the African American community, we're working with our Native American community and having them tell their stories, and we'll get some of those on our memory project. And this is so great because it's freely available to anybody, anywhere. No need for a library card, just log in and see what we're doing and how we are passing along our history for anybody who cares to learn more. And we are actively looking for other projects, other ways to reach people and highlight their histories and their interests too. So we can move on to the next library.
Hi, everyone. I'm Whitney Woody. I'm the Children's Services Librarian at the Johnson County Public Library System, the Clark Pleasant branch.
And I'm Keely Waters. I am also in Children's Services, and I am at our Trafalgar branch.
So for those who are out of state, I just wanted to give a little background of our library. We have 4 branches. We're located about 30 minutes south from Indianapolis. We serve suburban and rural communities, and we have a population about 150,000. So our EDI work started in the later part of 2020. We have an EDI steering committee here, as you can tell on the screen. And the leader of this committee is our assistant director. Our steering committee comprises of 10 members that serve in various parts of the library. So our first task for our steering committee, and just to set a foundation, was to craft a diversity statement. The members of our steering committee benchmarked with other libraries just to see what they had in their diversity statement. And we just also got input of like, what did we want our library to represent? We formulated our diversity statement and we sent it to our board to get approval. And when it went there was some pushback to the wording we used. We listed out marginalized members of our community, and our board wanted to know, why can't we just say all instead? So they didn't initially approve our diversity statement. So we went back, we did our research, we formulated a response to say, like, we wanted these groups to be noticed, have their names listed so they know that they are welcome here at our library. And so it went back for a second vote and it did get approved. So some other things that our steering committee has worked on is a staff survey, equity objectives and goals, and subcommittees. I'm going to speak a little more about that. So our next task was finding out what input from our staff. So we created a staff survey, and some questions that we included were, what do the terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion mean to them? What terms would they like to learn about, such as allyship, microaggressions, cultural humility, and so on. We asked them, is there a good balance of diversity among staff, programs, displays, and community partners? And we asked, did they feel comfortable being themselves at the workplace? And are they comfortable raising concerns about discrimination or harassment in the library? And we wanted to know from them, like, what challenges does our library face? From that survey, we had, I think, over 40 some responses, which is about half of our staff that responded to our survey. And we got differing views from everyone, for sure. So from there, we wanted to do our objectives. So our steering committee was tasked with coming up with goals and objectives that we would like to see our library go forth on. So from our staff survey information and from the goals that we presented as a steering committee, our assistant director took all that information and broke it down into subcategories, such as programming, collection development, and so forth. And from there, our subcommittees were formed. Next slide. So from all that information gathered, we have our collection and readers advisory, library access, programming, community engagement, and workforce development and staff training subcommittees. And of these subcommittees, we have about 6 to 8 members on each committee, and they serve from various parts of the library as well. And we wanted to set goals for 2021. So we took that information and we conversated with our subcommittees to see what they wanted, and we formulated about 3 to 5 goals to focus on for 2021. Within these goals, we wanted to be ambitious yet realistic. We wanted to anticipate any kind of barriers that we might face along the way, such as COVID. We wanted to determine like what other parts or what other departments or staff that weren't on these subcommittees might be involved when forming these goals, and of course, set a realistic timeline. So many of these committees that you see on the screen completed a good amount of goals and objectives that you'll see on our next slide. Keely and I are leaders of our community engagement committee, and I think the biggest barrier for us was COVID. We had a hard time reaching out to our community members and leaders. We did a lot of emailing just to establish a connection. We really wanted to focus on how could the library better serve underrepresented groups in our community, and just through emailing alone during COVID, we didn't get much feedback at all. So I'll let Keely talk a little more about that. Keely?
All right. If I could get the next slide, please. Okay, so here we've got some of our equity action objectives. These were some goals that we had for each of the different subcommittees throughout the system. And if you look in the lower left corner, you can see the goals that that our subcommittee formulated based on staff and community feedback. Our first goal was to engage with community organizations to identify underrepresented communities and needs. We wanted to establish and cultivate a relationship with the Sikh community. We wanted to incorporate the voices of ALC learners, which is our Adult Learning Center, in services, programs, and collections. Another goal was to convene with local leadership to discuss EDI issues at an institutional level. And finally, we wanted to network with other Indiana public libraries on their EDI work, which we very obviously have gotten to do. Next slide, please. So despite COVID and all of the restrictions that came with it, we actually made a wonderful amount of progress. We are really proud of everything that we have been able to get done. I personally was able to schedule a meeting with a local school regarding their EDI work. Our area schools are under some fire recently, so many were not willing to speak with me, and several schools did not even return my emails or voicemails. COVID has been a large obstacle in meeting with any sort of government official, but with lightening restrictions and lower case numbers, I really hope to squeeze that in this year. In regards to collaborating with other libraries, this has been just incredible, super exciting. This collaboration has led us to hosting some EDI roundtables, which we had hoped to do, speaking as a panel at ILF, as Shelby mentioned earlier, and even to creating this webinar for you all today. Our marketing director had the opportunity to sit down with the township trustees to see if a collaboration would be possible and impactful, and it was determined that it would be. Our director is working to build a relationship with the Sikh community. There seems to be some hesitation in opening up to those outside the faith, but we really hope to be able to kind of bridge that gap. We think that this relationship could mean a lot of things for a lot of people. And we compiled a list of the services and resources provided by the library and have an open line of communication with Gateway Services. So being in the trenches and doing the work, it can seem incredibly daunting. Several times I have felt like I wasn't doing enough, if anything at all. And in retrospect, as I reviewed our subcommittee's progress after the fact, I can see that we actually accomplished a great deal together. And it's crucial to remember that this work is a marathon and not a sprint. In getting ready for this webinar, one of the questions that we received in the pre-webinar survey was, how has COVID helped or hindered this work for us? And I know some of the libraries have already touched on this, but I'd like to weigh in as well. And I feel like I can honestly say it's been very 50-50. On one hand, the pandemic has opened a lot of eyes to the various disparities across racial and economic lines and many others. To those who are paying attention, communities who are lacking in medical care, funding, and other crucial resources were painfully highlighted. And while it's been devastating to see this and be made aware of it, it did make the work that much easier. We were able to see more clearly who was in need, where we were going wrong, and were given many amazing resources on how to fight this fight. On the other hand, being a community engagement committee who couldn't engage with the community, it certainly made things a little complicated. As I said earlier, I haven't been able to meet with government officials as COVID restrictions are still a little tight in our local government buildings. We're still unable to visit many schools as they are not allowing outside visitors. And we've been incredibly grateful for Zoom, but in this work, nothing quite beats being face-to-face. Next slide.
We just want to say thank you for joining us today. We are going to go to questions, but we just want to let you know that there will be resources sent out. A lot of things we've mentioned will get to you as soon as Beth is able to get the closed captioning done and everything. So it might take a few days, but if you have any questions for any of us individually, all of our information was provided on the slide. So we're happy to talk or share anything with you individually. And
Yeah.
now we're going to open it up to questions for anyone.
Yeah, we have a good 10 minutes at least if folks have any questions.
I'm gonna go ahead and turn off our slideshow so we can all
All right.
be seen.
If you have questions, oh, okay. Sarah wants to know, please describe your onboarding process. Do you mean for new library employees, Sarah? Yes, yes, she says. Do any of you include EDI work when you're hiring new folks?
I know that we do. That is part of our EDI work, is to work with onboarding new staff members. That's not my subcommittee, so I'm not intimately familiar with how it works. But I do know that any new employee is paired up with a member of the EDI steering committee, and they are kind of updated on our work, what we've learned, what we're doing, the different subcommittees, and our goals. Beyond that, if you are interested, if you want to email Whitney or I for JCPL's information, we'd be happy to get it to you.
And I believe Sarah's a director, so yeah, if you guys can hook her up, that would be wonderful. We have a question here. How do you respond to staff members who express disdain or at least ambivalence towards EDI efforts? Anybody want to handle that one?
If no one, okay, go ahead, Shelby.
Oh, I was simply going to say, Keely, that I know you guys had mentioned in your survey that you had some, I know I've asked you at some point that you mentioned that some staff did give you a little bit more negative feedback. The one thing I will say is that we have not actually had staff in any way push back to us. We have had a lot of staff that have asked questions, and to something Keely said earlier about our ground rules, and this is something I think we try to follow in general, is that we're not trying to get you to agree with us or things like that. Like, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But we do expect, at least here at HMPL, we do expect everyone to treat everybody fairly and have an open mind. So we fortunately have a really great staff that have been, if they have an issue, they present it in a wonderful way. But Keely and Whitney might be able to speak more to that.
In our initial work, when we sent out our staff and community surveys, we definitely got a little bit from both parties asking, well, how does this even apply to us? Like, we're not sure why this matters to us at work. And really the most concrete and uniform response that we've been able to give is in our word of the month, which Whitney kind of mentioned, where we take a topic, we define it, we discuss it, and then we consistently have a bullet point on those presentations that ask, how does this apply to our work? And so whoever is responsible for the word of the month that month goes through and gives a really thoughtful response as to how it applies.
We also have staff trainings as well through our niche academy that, like Keely said, they'll ask, how does this work apply to libraries? What did you get out from this? What did you gather from this training or whatever, and how can you implement it into our library? So I think through that, that has really helped with any kind of pushback, because from our survey, people weren't too happy about us doing EDI work at all. They thought it was very left of many people's views here. So I think through initial trainings and all the resources that you can provide, I think that's very helpful to deal with some of the pushback.
And I'm just going to throw it out there too. I currently facilitate a Project Ready cohort. So like, not everybody at our library does it at one time. We're doing it in small groups. And in terms of pushback, like, I am not an expert in this at all. This is my first time leading Project Ready, but I've learned a lot from our previous facilitator, who he did 2 sessions. And one of the things when you're just like face to face in a meeting and having pushback is just remembering there's 5 agreements with Project Ready. We touched on them in the beginning, but just finding a way to help participants feel like their voices heard, but also, bringing it back around. And for anybody interested in facilitating Project Ready, getting some guidance from somebody experienced that has gone through it before, I found that to be really helpful. So,
And we do hope that the EDI conversations that we're having will allow people to express, and so we all learn from that. Even if you don't agree totally, that's how we grow. When you disagree, listen, we are all family. We are part of the library family, and even in your families, you have disagreements, and that's okay. So you still have to learn, and you'll grow from that. So I'm hopeful that we can at least share the information that we have, and it's going to be up to the individual whether or not they're going to grow or stay the same. And we're hoping that they choose the growth route because they'll get left behind if not. So we don't want to leave anybody behind. We all are in this together.
Somebody also,
Go ahead, sorry.
oh, Beth, I was just going to add on, somebody also asked about pushback in the community, not just staff. I will say for us, we've been really fortunate. There was already a Zionsville Diversity Coalition in our town, and we haven't quite gotten to work with them on everything yet, but in youth services, Robin and some of the staff that she works with were able to do a Juneteenth story time in the park that was very well attended. That's something we hadn't had before. So we haven't necessarily experienced pushback from our community, but we also have not necessarily, not that we haven't advertised that we have a committee, but we've spent a lot of time really focusing on what we are and building our foundation. We haven't quite done a lot of things out in the community yet or with the library. So I'm not saying we won't ever experience that, but I think we can embody a lot of those same topics that this is important work. This is why it's important. And we have our administration and our director and our strategic plan and everything to support us with that.
I do think that our director kind of sets the tone from the top. I think this is very important to her. And I think it makes like, I don't think any of us feel fearful about pushback from the community. I mean, everybody feels fearful of pushback from the community, but I think we know we would be supported by her. I think that makes a huge difference for me personally, at least. Like, I haven't had to encounter anything like that, but I do feel like I do feel like I would be supported by both, our director as well as my own, department head. So to me, that's like crucial. That's really important. So.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions? And while we wait for questions, I just want to reiterate how much I love the setting the tone of the conversation in advance. A lot of times groups will also come up with their own agreements before they're going to discuss something like this. So you could start with something like Johnson County shared at the beginning, or you could create your own, one thing that one of my groups, I work with YALSA on something, likes to say is, instead of saying it's come from a safe space or this is a safe space, we're going to say it's a brave space, because brave means that we're going to kind of be with our discomfort, like others have said, and just be brave and have difficult conversations. Let's see, we have a question from Kylie. I'm brand new to this librarian stuff. So is a collection audit a process I would learn via Evergreen or just looking at the books? So actually, Kylie, the state library, I did a webinar about diversity audits, which is basically looking at your collection and assessing what's in it. So I will put the link to that diversity audit webinar in the resources. Like when I send out all the resources, I'll include that, and you can take a look at it and see what you think. Sure, no problem. Great. All right, it is 2:58 Eastern time here in Indiana. Do we have any last minute questions? I see some thank yous. All right. So one more time, I'll be sending an LEU Library Education Unit certificate out to everyone who was here today via email. And I will also be sending out the resources once I get those, and I will also send out the recording once that one is ready to go. The recording will take the longest, but the other things hopefully I can get out to you quickly. I'll try to condense it into no more than 2 emails out to everyone. All right, thank you so much to all of our presenters, Shelby and Robin and Amy and Ashley and Angie and Keely and Whitney. I really appreciate you all sharing your experiences and your willingness to answer more questions beyond this webinar, because we will again be sharing their information with you too in the resource information if you have specific questions or maybe something you didn't want to talk about on camera. So thank you, and goodbye to everyone. Bye. I'm going to stop the recording.
Bye.